Chakshurunmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Sadvatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Gaur Premanande Haribo. What a pleasure to see you all and to be here at this beautiful temple to discuss Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One of the inevitabilities of life is that we have to make decisions. And one might say that our lives are a series of decisions. And I mentioned the other night a quote that I found that it's in the decision-making process that we determine our destiny. Therefore, looking into the way in which pure devotees make decisions is helpful in guiding us towards the ultimate destination. Because just because one surrenders to Krishna, as we'll see tonight, doesn't mean that one won't face difficult decisions. Of course, that's not such a difficult decision because, and by that I mean surrendering to Krishna, because if anyone's, and forgive me for using this term, done their homework, they will come to the conclusion naturally that there's no other sane choice in life other than to surrender to Krishna. Other kinds of choices are doomed to failure and therefore a symptom of insanity. So, even after one makes the decision to surrender to Krishna, one may then be given a series of tests in order to purify one's will even more, to surrender even deeper. This happens in many cases, has happened in many cases, and we see throughout the scripture that there are devotees, great devotees, who have surrendered and then are faced with various obstacles and they have to make hard choices. Of course, one of the most difficult choices comes when we are inevitably faced with the end of life. Of course, there's no end of life but the end of the body. And I've been around people when they're getting ready to leave their body, and I've also heard from others that there's a point at which one must decide that now I'm going to give up my body. And that is juxtaposed with the other alternative, which is to keep fighting. And maybe there's a cure, and hope springs eternal, and everyone's a doctor. Whomever you meet will tell you, I have a cure. I've seen it. Even people in obviously their last few days of life are then rallied by somebody who comes along and says, no, this thing will definitely cure you. You just take pine nuts. Nobody knows this. Soak them in turpentine. You'll be better in no time. and therefore, it's important throughout one's life, Krishna says, prayana kale manasachalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bruvor madhye pranamavesha samyak satam param purusham upaiti divyam. To develop the strength of mind and heart for when the time comes to be determined in reaching the destination when it's time to give up the body. Because, I remember when I was a kid, there was a high dive at one of the pools that we go to. And sometimes kids would go up the ladder, and once they get halfway down the plank, the diving board, they'd look down and they go, I'm not going. At the peril of their entire reputation as a kid, they'd have to back down. And, it's difficult. And so similarly, when one comes to that final phase in life, in fact, Sangita Devi Dasi, our god sister, wrote a book about it called The Final Journey. And there are others, Giriraj Maharaj also wrote about the final phases of life from different traditions, people with different perspectives about what happens at the time of death. Nonetheless, and even if you're around people who have been secularized their whole life, they gain a different perspective at the time of death. And there's obviously a separation between their secular philosophy and the reality of what's taking place for them, which is they're being asked to leave their body. And there are a lot of decisions to make at that time. There are decisions to make before you leave your body about what you're going to do with all your things and how you want them to be divided up. Everyone should have a living will. Even better than that, you should have a revocable living trust in which the living will is placed. If you have any estate whatsoever, or if you have any dependents, it should be designated. That's responsible. You have to make decisions. And it's an interesting thing to do, to sit down and write your will while you think, I'm perfectly healthy. I probably won't die for another couple 100 million years. And that's the youthful mentality. But if you do the right thing and you actually do look into it, then, sorry, Hare Krishna. Then that is a hard decision also. What are you going to do with all your stuff? You ever thought of that? Even if you're distributing it in a Krishna conscious way, who are you going to leave it to? Where's it going to go? That's a difficult decision to make. I've done it once, and I'm going to meet my attorney to change it all around again too, because some places I left it, I've moved on, and so I'm painting this picture of a lifetime, an ocean of decisions that we have to make. So how do we make them properly? Well, I thought of a few places that are exemplary in the scripture that will be really interesting to read together. They always are, especially because, let's say, for instance, we look at the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This is an exciting juncture. At the beginning of the second chapter, Arjuna is in a situation that we may be able to relate to, and that is, I give up. This is terrible. I'm not. I don't know how to decide, and he's overwhelmed. And that really is one of the appealing aspects of Bhagavad Gita. In some versions, that chapter 2 is called the Yoga of Despair. And oftentimes people, when they hear about other people's problems or their despair, they become very interesting. They hear about all their successes. That's also interesting, but in a different way. This hearing about other people's problems is more vital to one's own interests, because normally people experience a lot of despair and difficulties in their life, and they like to hear how others have gone through it and how they've dealt with it. So Arjuna, after coming to the battle, walking out on the diving board, and then seeing how far down it is and what he was up against, he said, I'm not going. His equivalent, putting down his bow for a Kshatriya, is when a third grader walks back down and goes down the stairs instead of diving off of the diving board. And that's a difficult situation to be in. So now, take two. Thank you. Arjuna has come to this point, and I'm going to pick up at this point because we're aware of the kind of despair he goes through. And now the relief comes. Oftentimes when one makes a decision, it's after one has no more options. And we see this just in the case of, in a similar way, Gajendra, who had everything going for him. He was a king in his previous life, named Indradyumna, but due to some misunderstanding with a sage, sages sometimes get upset for the benefit of others, because as it turns out, when they curse people, it's actually benediction. Anything that happens throughout the Bhagavatam, you'll find that anything that any major event, even minor events, are precipitated by a sage cursing somebody. Right, Navina? Have you checked that out? I looked at it. It's actually true throughout the Bhagavatam. If you look at all the instances, you can catalog them. So Gajendra was Indradyumna's previous life. He had offended a sage. In fact, the sage, it was similar as the situation with Maharaj Parikshit, who had come to the hermitage of Shamika Rishi, and then the Rishi was in samadhi and didn't respond to the king coming in and needing some water. So uncharacteristically, Parikshit Maharaj became angry, and out of frustration, he took up a dead snake and hung it around the neck of this sage and then walked out. And then later on, he found that he had been cursed. So in a similar way, Indradyumna had not responded somehow to this sage who cursed him, said, because you're non-responsive, you might as well be a dumb elephant in your next life. So this king became an elephant. However, because he had been dutiful in his previous life, he remembered his last life when he was in the throes of death, but not until then. And he didn't exactly remember his last life, he just remembered the prayers that he had chanted in his last life. But you'll find that in the Bhagavatam, Gajendra's crisis is mentioned. And it's in that crisis that he came to terms with this huge decision he had to make. So we find Arjuna in a similar situation on the battlefield, and in 2:7 we find this verse. Karpanya dosha pahata sabhava pritchami tam dharma samuda chetaha yasrayasya nishchitam bruhitan me shishyashteham sharimam tvam prapanam. You'd probably all like to say it, huh? After being out in the world today, you probably want to recite this verse. Let's do it all. Karpanya dosho pahata subhava pritchami tvam dharma samudha chetaha Yastrayasya nishitam bruhitam me shishyashteham sharimam tvam prapanam. We have microphones out there already? Okay. Dheeraj, could you read the translation, please?
Now I'm confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I'm your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me.
Now let's all say it together. Now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Okay, purport. Victoria, would you start reading? Do the first paragraph, please.
By nature's own way, the complete system of material activities is a source of perplexity for everyone. In every step there is perplexity, and therefore it behooves one to approach a bona fide spiritual master who can give one proper guidance for executing the purpose of life. All Vedic literatures advise us to approach a bona fide spiritual master to get free from the perplexities of life, which happen without our desire. They are like a forest fire that somehow blazes without being set up by anyone. Similarly, the world situation is such that perplexities of life automatically appear without our wanting such confusion. No one wants fire, and yet it takes place, and we become perplexed. The Vedic wisdom therefore advises that in order to solve the perplexities of life and to understand the signs of the solution, one must approach a spiritual master who is in the disciplic succession. A person with a bona fide spiritual master is supposed to know everything. One should not therefore remain in material perplexities, but should approach a spiritual master. This is the purport of this verse.
Okay, let's hear just a few reflections, anything that you heard in that first paragraph. Yes, Dheeraj.
The statement that struck me is a person with a bona fide spiritual master is supposed to know everything. So that is profound and a real secret to discover.
Yes, because Yo mam eva masammudo janati purushottamam sasarvavid bhajati mam sarvabhavina bharata. Krishna says, one who knows me knows everything. And it doesn't mean that one is omniscient as Krishna is omniscient. Vedaham samatitani, Krishna says, vartamanani charjuna bhavishani chabhutani mam tu veda nakashchana. I know everything, I know everyone that's going on all the time. But one who knows that Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead and the source of everything, and that everything's moving according to His will, is the knower of everything, and also one who knows the system of knowledge and the purpose of knowledge is known to be the knower of everything. So, yes, this is one of the very fundamental foundational points for making decisions in life. And we find it at this juncture in the Bhagavad Gita that one must have a bona fide spiritual master in order to make proper decisions. Because even throughout the Shastra there are various opinions. And you may say, well, just follow Prabhupada's books. Well, there are also apparently contradictory statements there. So one will need, just as one needs an attorney, there may be law books, yeah, there are the law books, fine, but there are many questions between each line and in each paragraph of how to apply the particular instructions that are being given. So taking help from the superior authority whose life, Shabde Parichanishnatam, is based on following the Shastra, and who has imbibed that wisdom. Also, we find especially important that one not only who has studied and understood the Shastra, but one who has also dedicated one's life to a spiritual master and has picked up the mood and method of that spiritual master in practical matters as well, becomes extremely helpful in making decisions throughout one's life based on example. We see when Giriraj Maharaj comes, or when he doesn't come, we listen to him anyway in various places, but he always gives very practical advice. Someone will ask a question and he'll say, well, here's how Prabhupada did it. And it's very fortunate to know that there are people still available that you can talk to and ask them, what would Prabhupada do in a situation like this? And you say, well, I remember what he did. This is what he did, and this is what he told me. And this is part of the benefit of disciplic succession over a Veda-based search. A Veda-based search, you may find various things. Definitely one of the greatest inventions of the modern century. But also, you'll find a nuance in the personal association of those who have had that benefit of that association and experience as well in taking instruction. So this is one of the ways in which one fortifies one's life towards making decisions. Of course, it's not that the spiritual master will make all the decisions for us as well, as we'll find out when we go into a few other instances in the Shastra. Even Krishna will ask us to make up our own mind in certain circumstances. What else did you hear from the paragraph? Yes.
The very first sentence in the purport, it says, by nature's own design, this place is full of complexity and it is supposed to be perplex.
Yeah, look at that.
Full of
by nature's own way, the complete system of material activities is a source of perplexity for everyone. So, why'd you like that? Or why did you notice it anyway?
Like sometimes, I mean, as a software engineer, sometimes if you have to like solve a problem, you have to know like where the problem is.
Yeah. Where is it? Everywhere.
And the one who has written the code is usually the one who knows where the problem is. So Krishna says this world is full of complexity, and he also says Dukkhalama Shashvatam. So better listen to it.
Nice. Right out of Silicon Valley, that one. But could you look up the word perplexity? Because it's an interesting word, isn't it? Yes, you got it. Go ahead.
It's a noun. Inability to deal with or understand something complicated or unaccountable. An entangled state. The origin is Middle English, from Old French perplexité or late Latin perplexitas, from Latin perplexus, which means entangled or confused.
Entangled or confused, yeah. Great. Bhaktivatsal.
Having taken Latin for 4 years, when I was reading this, perplexity to me means confused. And when I was reading the purport with everybody, I was understanding that from the purport, we're all easily confused. And yet the purport tells us to approach a spiritual master. For the Vedic literatures are simple and full of information on how to avoid the material perplexities. But if you don't do that, your option is to seek out a teacher or an educator who works on theories. And theories are not based in anything but ideas. There is some science behind it, but theories often create more perplexity, more concerns, more questions. We're going to the spiritual master, your questions are there, but the answers are also there. So that's what I was thinking when we were reading this.
Okay, thank you. Like, there are ways in which people reach out to other kinds of authorities, if I understood you correctly. And some of them base their answers on relative knowledge. That is through their own research, right? The idea is that there is a self-effulgent knowledge. And by taking that as one's guidance, let me add something to that. Self-effulgent and infallible knowledge. This is the idea that Prabhupada mentions in the beginning of the Sri Ishopanishad, for instance, and also in the Tattva Sandarbha. Jiva Goswami gives the epistemology, or the means for which one knows that one's actually performing activities that are authorized. And in that he describes how there's various ways of getting knowledge. And the ones that are based on one's own endeavor through one's senses, mind and senses, is fallible, whereas taking knowledge from the perfect authority, which we say is the Vedas, is the perfect means. And as I was saying earlier, there may be ways in which even taking knowledge from the Vedas may become complex as well. Therefore, one needs a good attorney, as Prabhupada wants to put it, to help guide one through the Shastras and help one apply those things perfectly as well. Yes?
Hare Krishna. So, as humans, we try to solve problems. You hit a problem, you say, okay, maybe I try this, or maybe I try this. But once you step back and ask yourself, that by nature and by design, this world is, complex and perplex, and it is by design, it is that way, then you ask yourself, okay, what else I should be doing rather than the means that I know. Once you know that, then you start seeking ways to actually understand, okay, by design this is actually complex, by design it is actually bound to confuse you. Now let me seek a help that is something beyond me to overcome some of the obstacles.
Thank you, that was very helpful, logical and helpful. Okay, let's read the next paragraph. Who is the man in material perplexities? It is he who does not understand the problems of life. In the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 3.8.10, the perplexed man is described as follows. Yo va etad aksharam gargyavitat vasmal lokat praiti sakripanaha. He is a miserly man who does not solve the problems of life as a human, and who thus quits this world like cats and dogs, without understanding the science of self-realization. This human form of life is a most valuable asset for the living entity who can utilize it for solving the problems of life. Therefore, one who does not utilize this opportunity properly is a miser. On the other hand, there is the Brahmana, or he who is intelligent enough to utilize this body to solve all the problems of life. Ya etad aksharam gargi vidit vasma lokat praiti sabrahmana. That's the other side of it. Very interesting that it's mentioned that he is a miserly man who does not solve the problems of life as a human, indicating that there are other choices and various other facilities that are offered. But the human condition, the human facility is meant specifically for solving the perplexities of life. That's also good to know. There are perplexities and that there is a solution to them. It gives one impetus to endeavor for that. And the Shastra gives multiple statements about, makes multiple statements about the rarity of the human form of life. For instance, there are 2 verses in the 11th canto that say, one starts, Labvasu dulabam idam bahusambhavante, manusham artatam anityam apihadhira. And that is that the human life is very rarely attained. It's hard to get. And it's very valuable. Labvam sudurlabam idam bahusambhavante. You get it after many, many other kinds of births. Many, many. Manusha martadam, and it is full of value. Anityam, even though it's temporary. apihadira. So that's available to those who are dhira. They're a little stable-minded and know how to use the human form of life. And the other verse starts off in a similar way. Nrideham adyam sulabam sudulabam plavam sukalpam gurukarnadaram, which Krishna speaks and says that the human body, Nrideham, is a suitable boat that can cross over the material ocean. And then he goes on to say that you need a captain. You need winds also. Apparently it's a sailboat. So you need winds to help push you across the waters. And those winds, he says, come from his instructions, like in the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. They ply you across the ocean. So it's a rare thing. And to have that perspective that I've been given a facility for a very short amount of time, but it's very highly valuable in order to solve the overall problem I have. And this is something that Prabhupada taught again and again, that there are many perplexities of life, and if you try to solve the various problems, immediate problems that trouble one, and miss the big problem that's causing all the little problems, which is being identified with the material body and being entangled in the material body because as a result of lower consciousness, then you miss the opportunity altogether. And the ultimate way to solve the overall problem is to become Krishna conscious. And one therefore needs to take the class called Consciousness Maintenance 101. The consciousness has to be maintained. They don't have that in university. I don't think even Stanford has it. No? Consciousness Maintenance 101. How to maintain your consciousness so that it doesn't drag you down into more perplexity. Is a great art and a great science. It's a class they should look into. You could ask them. Maybe they'd present that. Okay, so human life, very rare, and if you don't try to solve, if you don't use it, you're being called a kripana, a miser, because you're wasting an asset. And those who fully use their asset of the human life to solve the ultimate problem of life, they make that decision to use every circumstance in my life to solve the overall problem, which is that I'm faced with non-existence. How could that happen? How could I be entangled in this being that I'm an eternal soul? And the Brahmana means one who uses all his resources to solve that problem. Finally, the kripanas or miserly persons waste their time in being overly affectionate for family, society, country, etc. in the material concept of life. Can I read that again? The kripanas or miserly persons waste their time in being overly affectionate for family, society, country, etc. in the material conception of life. One is often attached to family life, namely to wife, children, and other members on the basis of skin disease. The kripana thinks that he is able to protect his family members from death, or the kripana thinks that his family or society can save him from the verge of death. Such family attachment can be found even in the lower animals who take care of children also. Yeah, grizzly bears will come after you if you any animal practically. The mothers have a natural way in which they protect their children. I mean, in one sense it's noble, but in another sense it's not so noble, it's just natural. So if someone in the human form of life thinks, well, I'm taking care of my family, I'm protecting my kids, well, so are grizzly bears. So what? You didn't really rise above the animal species yet by doing that. That fair? It's not unfair? Okay. Being intelligent, Arjuna could understand that his affection for family members and his wish to protect them from death were the causes of his perplexities. Often he could understand, although he could understand that his duty to fight was awaiting him, still on account of miserly weakness, he could not discharge the duties. He is therefore asking Lord Krishna, the Supreme Spiritual Master, to make a definite solution. He offers himself to Krishna as his disciple. He wants to stop friendly talks. Talks between the master and the disciple are serious, and now Arjuna wants to talk very seriously before the recognized spiritual master. Krishna is therefore the original spiritual master of the science of Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna is the first disciple for understanding the Gita. How Arjuna understands the Bhagavad Gita is stated in the Gita itself, and yet foolish, mundane scholars explain that one need not submit to Krishna as a person, but to the unborn within Krishna. There is no difference between Krishna's within and without, and one who has no sense of this understanding is the greatest fool in trying to understand Bhagavad Gita. So this verse we're entering into evidence as a foundational verse for making decisions in life. The Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, the other scriptures of the world, in our genre, point to the importance of getting superior knowledge from a person who's situated in superior knowledge and being guided by that. And this is a reasonable way to make advancement. Of course, in any field, even in material pursuits, there's a way in which one saves a lot of time by searching out a mentor, someone who's already done it and has full knowledge of the science and can impart it. So before I move on to the next point, maybe there's a couple of thoughts. Thoughts means anything that that went through your mental system. Yes.
I have a comment on this. This is something that I think about a lot when I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita, or the idea that attachment seems to me somehow to be equated to love. And I would love to get a little insight on that, because I think about myself, well, does Mother Teresa love the people she helps, or is she attached to them? And maybe it's just a nomenclature or the energy behind it, but it kind of seems like the Gita almost condemns love in my mind from reading it. And I was wondering if you could maybe clarify that a little bit. Like, how do you relate to family members? Because when I read this, I'm like, well, what decision do I make? Do I have a family? Do I have somebody I care about? Should I just give up everything? Because it sounds like this is telling me to do that. Right. Can you give a little insight into that?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's something that requires nuance. And I say that because we're living in a dual reality. Partly we're obligated to act properly in one realm of life, which means that which is related to our physical existence. And although that's temporary, and it's pointed out again and again through the Shastra that it's illusory, because it is, if you analyze it. In fact, there are examples given in the Shastra that mention the interaction we have with family members to be the same thing as meeting on an airplane or at a bar, or you go say to a restaurant and you meet with some people, and then you sit down, maybe you all have name badges even. Hi, I'm Sammy. I'm Pete. It's like, hi Sammy, hi Pete. It's like, what do you do? I play golf. I play golf too. And then you start talking. It's like, what are you going to have? Lemonade? I'm going to have lemonade too. Wow. Hey, Pete and Sammy are like friends. And then Pete and Sammy get up after a couple hours of chatting, and they go off in different directions, along with everybody else who's at the table. And they never meet again. And the Srimad Bhagavatam says, this is family life. We come together because of a force of circumstances, by karma. I have a particular mother, father, brothers, and sisters and so forth, and then they all take off in different directions. Where'd they go? I have very little idea. I don't even know where I'm going. So on one side, this ephemeral sense is projected, and on the other side, there's a duty we have. For instance, parents, therefore, can't just say that, well, kids, it's illusory, we're not eating today. And also, you need some kind of shelter, and you have to go work. And if you go to your job and they ask you where you're from, and you say from the spiritual world, they won't hire you. You have to be reasonable. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his book Jaiva Dharma, has therefore demarcated two aspects of our life. One is called Vyavaharika, and the other Paramartika. Vyavaharika means the practical way in which we have to interact with the world, even though it's temporary. And Paramartika means our ultimate interest in life. And at various stages of our life, partly because certain stages of our life demand more interaction with the material world, and partly because it's based on our realization how much we care to interact with the material world. However, there is a clear definition in the Chaitanya Charitamrita about love. So love means Krishnendriya Priti. It means to want to please Krishna's senses. Because we're part and parcel of Krishna just as much as this finger is a part of my hand, which is a part of my arm and part of my body. And its real duty, its real happiness in life is feeding the stomach. And if it starts to buck the system and goes on strike, it'll starve and it won't be very happy. And so the main the happiness of a living entity is to serve Krishna. This is the theory of the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and so forth, that if you serve Krishna, then you're serving the whole. And so this is called Krishnendriya Priti, which means to actually develop full realization of this and then a love for doing that. As you serve Krishna, then you become satisfied as much as the finger becomes satisfied when it feeds the stomach. And then Kamendriya Priti. Is that it? I'm trying to remember the verse. Huh? Karmendriya Priti. Yeah, that means that Kamendriya Priti. Atmendriya Priti, sorry, there it is. Atmendriya Priti means that I'm trying to please my own senses, separate from Krishna's. And this is called kama, or lust. And although kama sometimes is equated as love in this world, it's actually the opposite. So that leaves us with your real question, like what's our duty in this world? One section of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Narada Muni is describing how one should go through the various stages of life in a balanced way, so as to nourish both one's spiritual life and also take care properly of all one's obligations in the material world. And he describes how one, for instance, in family life should conduct oneself. And that is that externally, he or she should give full love and attention to the family members, because that's absolutely required for a healthy relationship. Internally, however, should have some perspective that although I'm giving my love and attention here, ultimately, this isn't my real family, because we're just passing through. And incidentally, those who are devotees may give even more attention, or maybe I'll use the word should, give more attention and love to their family members, understanding that they have a sacred duty to do, because they're, for instance, parents raising children who are devotees. And husband and wife, although they're husband and wife, they may also see that this is a devotee. So they give their heartfelt service in that way. Long answer to a short question, but as I said, there's nuance to this. And there's an art to living in which one, Krishna says, feels compassion for the condition of all living entities who are entangled in the material world, having been there oneself. Atma upamyena sarvatra samam pashyati Arjuna. The enlightened yogi, he says, sees how there's this kind of entanglement going on, and therefore there's suffering based on that, and therefore has compassion on that level. And the devotee therefore lives a balanced life and knows how to interact on both levels, in the material world and the spiritual world, but makes no mistake that the so-called love of the material world is genuine. It is genuine in a sense, but it becomes its original source, the devotee understands, comes from one's love for Krishna, but it gets perverted, reflected in this world as my love for instance, family members, or even for my team. Here in the Bay Area, we have the 49er faithful. People paint their whole cars. There's one car that's somebody, it must be a worker at the park near where I live, Washington Park. He parks his car there all the time. He took the trouble, and probably great expense, because it's a great paint job, to paint his whole Mustang to say 49er faithful. What is the 49ers? A football team. It's not actually one thing. There's not like there's a lot of love either for, I mean, once the people break their kneecap or something like that, they have to leave the team and they don't get paid anymore. And, but people project this idea that I'm faithful. What are you faithful for? The 49ers. Who are the 49ers? Well, not the same team they were last year or the team they're going to be next year. But there's this idea in the material world, and that's projected into family life, into love for my company. In Japan, it used to be, of course, there's still a lot more than in America. You die for your company. In fact, nowadays, people go to work on their day off. So you got it good here. Because they want to show loyalty to the company. And in fact, it's considered noble to sleep when you're at work. Even at your workstation, you fall asleep, people go, see, he's working so hard, he can't even stay awake. Because there's some devotion. But the company really, that idea is misplaced. Throughout my life, and I may be deported for this, although I'm a citizen, we used to be asked to stand up every morning and say, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And I did it dutifully until I was about 14. I say, what is this crap? I'm not worshiping this flag anymore. And so, there's different perspectives on what is, where to place. The impetus for love is real, but where to place it it should be based on a clear understanding of who we are. That's the point. So it can be misplaced. And even subtle things, in our line of teachers, there are ways in which there's philanthropy, which is misplaced. You can say all philanthropy is the same, but some of our great teachers say, no, it's not. So there's philanthropy where you may give people false hope because you may be taking care of a problem that actually can't be solved. For instance, it's important to take care of the body, it's important to feed people, but once they come into this world, there's a certain kind of justice that's coming from karma that they're going to get no matter what you do. And therefore, if you try to make it seem like you're going to solve the problems of the world by feeding them or giving medicine or something like that, then you may be giving misguidance to people in a certain way. And it's not that Vaishnavas will say, therefore, close down all the hospitals, don't feed anybody. Devotees are famous for feeding people. But it has to be connected to something that actually has an ultimate effect to bring one to pure knowledge. Something. So, I'm looking at these places in the Shastra where decisions had to be made, and when devotees made them, and how they made them. And there's another one I thought of, which is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who grew up in Navadvip. He made his appearance in Navadvip. He made his pastimes there as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as a young scholar. And then when he went off to Gaya, he met his spiritual master, and after taking initiation from him, he became transformed into a devotee. So, after starting his Sankirtan movement in Navadvip, and then coming into some resistance from some of his classmates from school, what happened was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in a kind of ecstasy, instead of chanting Hare Krishna, was chanting the names of the gopis. And some of his brahmana from priestly families, elite kinds of people, classmates heard him chanting names of the gopis instead of Vedic mantras and so forth. They said, "What are you doing? This is not bona fide." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being Krishna himself, was sometimes in moods of ecstasy that nobody could understand. And when he was approached like this by some of these students, he picked up a stick and chased after one of them in a mood of ecstasy. And when this boy went back to all his friends, he said, "Who does he think he is?" And the boy said, "Yeah, who does he think he is?" He said, "We're Brahmins too. Why should we be chased like this? Next time, if he tries to do something, we'll all gang up on him." And Mahaprabhu could understand that the reason that he had come to the world, which was to teach Krishna consciousness, was being lost because of this social situation that had developed. So he made a decision, and it's recorded here in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is in Adi Leela 17:258. But the proud student community did not become submissive. On the contrary, the students spoke of the incident anywhere and everywhere. In a laughing manner, they criticized the Lord. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being omniscient, could understand the degradation of these students. Thus he sat at home, contemplating how to rescue them. All the so-called professors and scientists and their students generally follow the regulative principles of religion, fruit of activities and austerities, the Lord thought. Yet at the same time, they are blasphemers and rogues. Purport: here is a depiction of materialists who have no knowledge of devotional service. They may be very religious and may work very systematically or perform austerities and penances. But if they blaspheme the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are nothing but rogues. This is confirmed in the Hari Bhakti Surodaya. Bhagavad Bhakti Hinasya Jati Shastram Japastapa Apranasyaiva Dehasya Mandanam Lokaranjanam. If they are without knowledge of devotional service to the Lord, then great nationalism, fruitive political and social work, science and philosophy are all simply like costly garments decorating a dead body. Kind of to the point I was just making. The only offense of persons adhering to these principles is that they are not devotees. They are always blasphemous towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His devotees. Text 261. If I do not induce them to take to devotional service because of committing the offense of blasphemy, none of these people will be able to take to it. I have come to deliver the fallen souls, but now just the opposite has happened. How can these rogues be delivered? How may they be benefited? If these rogues offer me obeisances, the reactions of their sinful activities will be nullified. Then, if I induce them, they will take to devotional service. I must certainly deliver all these fallen souls who blaspheme me and do not offer me obeisances. I shall accept the sannyas order of life, and thus people will offer me their obeisances, thinking of me as a member of the renounced order. So, it goes on. Offering obeisances will relieve them of all the reactions of their offenses. Then, by my grace, devotional service, bhakti, will awaken in their pure hearts. All the unfaithful rogues of this world can be delivered by this process. There's no alternative. This is the essence of the argument. After coming to this firm conclusion, the Lord continued to stay at home. In the meantime, Keshava Bharati came to the town of Nadia. See how quickly it happened. Keshava Bharati was the sannyas guru of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He just happened to come there right after Mahaprabhu contemplated this, taking sannyas. But here he has to make a decision. This is in the context of the various ways in which we may be trying to spread the Krishna consciousness movement, and then we run into some kind of resistance. And then we may have to make an adjustment in order to do that. This is a decision which is made, and it may be something one has to think about very carefully. One must take help to enact, but it is a decision that comes to everyone who's part of the Krishna consciousness movement. So I just take a few reflections on this point as well. What kinds of decisions do you have to make? I'm asking you a question. When you're engaged in spreading the Krishna consciousness movement, what kinds of hard decisions about adjusting your service and so forth might come up? Yes, Victoria.
Hare Krishna. The decision about my capabilities and talents and everything that I have, how to apply it in the best way in Krishna consciousness, in preaching, and so like kind of making analysis of what I have and what can I use and what I can't use, maybe what will be useful.
That's a nice response. One who decides that this is going to be my preoccupation in life, that is spreading the Sankirtan movement, which is good work if you can get it, then might look very carefully at his or her own assets and then make a decision based on that of how to apply oneself. There's a famous devotee in our movement. He passed away about 10, 15 years ago, and his name was Sariputta Prabhu. I think he has a Facebook. Somebody posthumously set up a Facebook for him, and there's a archive of many of his talks, which I highly recommend listening to. He was a very kind of quiet, introspective person because he was, well, not because he was so brilliant, but he just happened to be introspective and brilliant. There are people who are extroverts who are brilliant also. But in the Krishna consciousness movement, there was a stereotype of what was an advanced devotee at the time. And because he was a little bit withdrawn and didn't seem to be such an outgoing kind of preacher or something like that, he was eventually moved to New Vrindavan. And there was some project going on building fences where they were digging holes. So people didn't think much of him because he wasn't very good at digging holes. And then Prabhupada put out an edict in ISKCON that he was looking for those who had higher education, especially graduate degrees in science and so forth, because he was founding a new institution called the Bhaktivedanta Institute, bringing together scientists as a think tank to come together to show the scientific relevance of Krishna consciousness to the world, and also to question the runaway train of modern science, which has really broken off from any kind of theology whatsoever, and was simply teaching postmodernism, deconstructionism, and so forth, making everybody question everything, including, well, not just question, but relativizing everything in order to, specifically to create doubt about an absolute truth and so forth. And Then, one morning in New Vrindavan, temple president made an announcement. Is there anybody here who has an advanced degree? Prabhupada's calling for you. So there was Sariputta over in the corner, not very well regarded, couldn't dig holes very well, kind of a quiet, nobody raised his hand, and it's like, you've got a degree? You can't even dig a hole. Meanwhile, when some people found some of his notes there in New Vrindavan, he had been doing mathematical calculations to figure out how many gallons of rain had fallen on West Virginia within a given amount of time, because his brain gravitated to such kinds of calculations. As it turned out, he became a very valued member of the Bhaktivedanta Institute, and by being in that niche, had written and presented. One of the places he presented was at a university where the devotees had put on a program, and the professor set up what he thought was a trap, because he was very much against Krishna consciousness. And he wanted the devotees to come in and present their thing, and then he would come in and just smash it in front of all the students. The hapless, crazy Hare Krishnas. Little did he know that Sariputta Prabhu was there that night, who, through his logic and intelligence and, of course, compassionate heart, answered the questions and presented the scientific basis for Krishna consciousness so eloquently that the professor really was nonplussed. And, so your point about finding out what are your real valuable assets and then using them for Krishna service is important. A nice point. What else? Yes, Harivamsha.
Thank you, Maharaj. What I feel the challenge comes is both internally and externally, and of feeling the stretch out of your comfort zone. So externally it could be when you feel a little pinch on your time and energy, and then Krishna is nudging, the Guru is nudging you to, do a little more, stretch out. Of course, giving the full dues to the other things, but that when you feel that little stretch, a little pain, then when Krishna is asking you to do more, that's externally. And internally, in terms of how selfless you are becoming in your activity, because the whole paradigm is of compassion. So unless and until you come out of the I zone to the other zone, whatever. So internally there's a stretch too. You realize, hey, I'm not being selfless enough, and that hurts. So you try to move, you refine yourself a little bit more, and that's a constant challenge. You observe, you refine, both internally and externally. So I think that always keeps on going.
Dynamic process. Thank you. Yes, right behind you, Damodar.
I think over a period of time, one thing which I've observed is how to be truthful with oneself. So if I double click on it, like there is one persona of devotees when they are with devotees, and there is another persona of individuals when they are outside the circle. So how to have a uniform picture, like coming to temple and mourning down everybody on the street, so just have a single characteristics inside and outside, and that has been one effort and adjustment. Not only in the association of devotees, but outside association of devotees also to be similar.
Integrity. To be whole. I didn't go to the seminar, but Mahatma Prabhu gave a seminar in Mayapur on integrity. And even though I didn't go to it, just knowing that there was a seminar on integrity made me think, I better be aware of that. And it is a decision to make moment to moment. It's a important, or I might even say the most important asset of a devotee to maintain his or her integrity. Because what else does one have ultimately, especially in the eyes of Krishna, that I maintain the standard both when everyone's watching and when everyone's not watching. And that's also a decision. It has to be made regularly, constantly perhaps. As long as one's in the material world, that decision has to be respected, or we have to confront that decision. It's not that we can let our guard down at any time. In fact, I was reading last night in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Krishna was talking about Paramahamsas and those who come to the highest stage of life. And in that context, he was mentioning how because of the powerful forces of the material nature, that there may be ways in which one is forced to, by either past habits or circumstances, to be in compromising situations. It can be very difficult, the material world. So one always has to be careful to make proper decisions, because a moment of indiscretion in that way can ruin one's reputation, can also put one in a situation where you don't have as much freedom to perform devotional service. I've even seen people practicing devotional service, one case a devotee who had a moment of indiscretion and then went back to his old habit of taking drugs just on a stopover somewhere and ended up dying. And I was just imagining what the last moments of his thinking process might have been, that how did it come to this? So vigilance and maintaining integrity so that one can make good decisions is very important. Now I just have a couple more. One is a classic case mentioned in the chapter of the Bhagavatam called The Son of Drona Punished, in which Arjuna was asked to make a decision about killing Ashvatthama, which he had promised to do. Ashvatthama was the son of Dronacharya, who is the military arts guru for the Pandavas. And during the battle of Kurukshetra, he had made a huge offense by killing the sleeping children, and then of Draupadi, and she had asked that he be killed. So Arjuna vowed that he would catch him, he would kill him, he would bring back his head. This is Kshatriya talk, and she could take her bath standing on his head. And so finally they did catch Ashvatthama, a rascal that he was, and they brought him to justice, tied him up, and then everyone was there, and back at the camp. So Bhima said, kill him. Draupadi changed her mind. She said, I don't want you to kill him because I don't want his mother to go through what I've gone through. And Yudhishthira then said, yeah, what Draupadi said is right. Let's do that. And Krishna said, no, I think you made a vow. You have to kill him. And there was this complexity suddenly in the context of devotional service, and right with Krishna standing there. So this should show that there's nuance in our relationships, even with Krishna and the devotees. So don't think that it's black and white. Generally, beginners think that way. And oftentimes, one would like to make it very simple because that's an easier way. A more simplistic way to think is also harder to think in terms of nuance because that challenges one's very fragile faith. To think that there are various ways to deal with the same problem rather than just like it just says it right here. then just do that. So I'll read just a couple of shlokas from this section. After binding Ashvatthama in 1:734, Arjuna wanted to take him to the military camp. The personality of Godhead, looking on with his lotus eyes, spoke to angry Arjuna. 35. Lord Sri Krishna said, O Arjuna, you should not show mercy by releasing this relative of a Brahmana, Brahmabandhu, for he has killed innocent boys in their sleep. A person who knows the principles of religion does not kill an enemy who is careless, intoxicated, insane, asleep, afraid, or devoid of his chariot, nor does he kill a boy, a woman, a foolish creature, or a surrendered soul. A cruel and wretched person who maintains his existence at the cost of others' lives deserves to be killed for his own well-being, otherwise he will go down for his own actions. Furthermore, I have personally heard you promise Draupadi that you would bring forth the head of the killer of her sons. This man is an assassin and murderer of your own family members. Not only that, but he has also dissatisfied his master. He is but the burnt remnants of his family. Kill him immediately. Sutta Goswami said, although Krishna, who was examining Arjuna in religion, encouraged Arjuna to kill the son of Dronacharya, Arjuna, a great soul, did not like the idea of killing him. Although Ashvatthama was a heinous murderer of Arjuna's family members. Purport. Arjuna was a great soul undoubtedly, which is proved here also. He is encouraged herein personally by the Lord to kill the son of Drona. But Arjuna considers that the son of his great teacher should be spared, for he happens to be the son of Dronacharya, even though he is an unworthy son, having done all sorts of heinous acts whimsically for no one's benefit. Lord Sri Krishna encouraged Arjuna outwardly just to test Arjuna's sense of duty. It is not that Arjuna was incomplete in the sense of his duty, nor was Lord Sri Krishna unaware of Arjuna's sense of duty, but Lord Sri Krishna put to test many of his pure devotees just to magnify the sense of duty. The gopis were put to such tests as well. Prahlad Maharaj was also put to such a test. All pure devotees come out successful in the respective tests by the Lord. 41. After reaching his own camp, Arjuna, along with his dear friend and charioteer Sri Krishna, entrusted their murderers unto his dear wife, who was lamenting for her murdered sons. Sutta Goswami said, Draupadi then saw Ashvatthama, who was bound with ropes like an animal, and silent for having enacted the most inglorious murder. Due to her female nature and due to her being naturally good and well-behaved, she showed him due respect as a Brahmana. She could not tolerate Ashvatthama's being bound by ropes, and being a devoted lady, she said, release him, for he is a Brahmana, our spiritual master. It was by Dronacharya's mercy that you learned the military art of throwing arrows and the confidential art of controlling weapons. He, Dronacharya, is certainly still existing, being represented by his son. His wife, Kripi, did not undergo a sati with him because she had a son. O most fortunate one who knows the principles of religion, it is not good for you to cause grief to glorious family members who are always respectful and worshipful. My Lord, do not make the wife of Dronacharya cry like me. I am aggrieved for the death of my sons. She need not cry constantly like me. If the kingly administrative order, being unrestricted in sense control, offends the Brahmana order and enrages them, then the fire of that rage burns up the whole body of the royal family and brings grief upon all. Sutta Goswami said, O Brahmanas, King Yudhishthira fully supported the statements of the queen, which were in accordance with the principles of religion and were justified, glorious, full of mercy and equality, and without duplicity. Nakula and Sahadev, the younger brothers of the king, and also Satyaki, Arjuna, the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, son of Devaki, and the ladies and others all unanimously agreed with the king. Bhima, however, disagreed with them and recommended killing this culprit who, in an angry mood, had murdered sleeping children for no purpose and for neither his nor his master's interest. Chaturbhuja, the four-armed one, or the personality of Godhead, after hearing the words of Bhima, Draupadi, and others, saw the face of his dear Arjuna and began to speak as if smiling. Purport: Lord Sri Krishna had 2 arms, and why he is designated as 4-armed is explained by Sridhar Swami. Both Bhima and Draupadi held opposite views about killing Ashvatthama. Bhima wanted him to be immediately killed, whereas Draupadi wanted to save him. We can imagine Bhima ready to kill while Draupadi is obstructing him. And in order to prevent both of them, the Lord discovered another 2 arms. Originally, the primeval Lord Sri Krishna displays only 2 arms, but in his Narayan feature he exhibits 4. In his Narayan feature he resides with his devotees in the Vaikuntha planets, while in his original Sri Krishna feature he resides in the Krishna Loka planet, far, far above the Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky. Therefore, if Sri Krishna is called Chaturbhuja, there is no contradiction. If need be, he can display hundreds of arms, as he exhibited in his Vishwarupa shown to Arjuna. Therefore, one who can display hundreds and thousands of arms can also manifest 4 whenever needed. When Arjuna was perplexed about what to do with Ashvatthama, Lord Sri Krishna, as the very dear friend of Arjuna, voluntarily took up the matter just to make a solution, and he was smiling also. The personality of Godhead said, "A friend of a Brahmana is not to be killed, but if he is an aggressor, he must be killed. All these rulings are in the scriptures, and you should act accordingly. You have to fulfill your promise to your wife, and you must also act to the satisfaction of Bhimasena and me." So this is a normal situation. Because when we come to these points where we have to make decisions in our lives, in our services, it's not that it's easy, otherwise anybody could do it. But it takes fortification by association with great souls, by understanding the tenets of Shastra, and by living a life of integrity to be able to clearly come to these very complex junctures in one's life and then make a decision which is correct. Of course, there have been times when devotees made opposite decisions about the same kind of situation. For instance, in the New York temple, temple presidents married somebody who claimed that she was an heiress to the Toyota company or something like that, and therefore everyone was giving her a lot of deference and space, and then she turned out to be a little bit, well, I'm just being euphemistic now, a little bit controlling. She was a tyrant and sort of took over the whole temple, and based on her supposed situation, she was ruling the whole place and doing all kinds of things that were not correct. I mean, really not correct. And I hope all this is in the Lilamrita, so that I'm not breaking big news here. In any case, the devotees were faced with a dilemma, because on one side they were trained to be dutiful, on the other side they were seeing discrepancies, and this happens a lot. These kinds of things come up. So what to do then? So some of them decided to follow the temple president carefully because they wanted to do their duty. Others became whistleblowers and said, this is unacceptable, and they brought it to Prabhupada's attention, or to the GBC, who brought it up to Prabhupada. If there was a GBC at that time, I'm not sure. But in any case, he came to know of it. And later on, after he had dealt with the situation, he didn't disparage either side, those who had decided to go along and those who had decided to. He gave some credit to both sides. Of course, more to the ones who had brought it out, but it wasn't like one was wrong and the other was right. So there oftentimes may be, according to one's intention also, which is an important aspect. But the complexity of the situation may be that there's not an exact, clear answer. Of course, in this case there is, and we're going to hear about it now. Just then, Arjuna could understand the motive of the Lord by his equivocal orders. Isn't that interesting, that he could understand precisely what to do after hearing equivocal orders? And this is an achievement that is reached by those who, as I just mentioned a few paragraphs ago, are careful to maintain their consciousness so that they can be aware of doing things for the right reason and with the right kind of guidance. Then they can cut cleanly and make good decisions. And that's really important. Just then Arjuna could understand the motive of the Lord by his equivocal orders. And thus with his sword he severed both hair and jewel from the head of Ashwatthama. Purport: contradictory orders of different persons are impossible to carry out. Make a note of that. Therefore a compromise was selected by Arjuna by his sharp intelligence. And he separated the jewel from the head of Ashwatthama. This was as good as cutting off his head, and yet his life was saved for all practical purposes. Here Ashwatthama is indicated as twice born. Certainly he was twice born, but he fell down from his position, and therefore he was properly punished. He, Ashwatthama, had already lost his bodily luster due to infanticide, and now, moreover, having lost the jewel from his head, he lost even more strength. Thus he was unbound and driven out of the camp. Cutting the hair from his head, depriving of his wealth, and driving him from his residence are the prescribed punishments for the relative of a Brahmana. There is no injunction for killing the body. Therefore the sons of Pandu and Draupadi, overwhelmed with grief, performed the proper rituals for the dead bodies of their relatives. So it may be helpful to hear about these complex situations and how they're overcome by sharp decisions which come from sharp intelligence, which come from good sadhana and good association. And also aligning oneself with good mentors. As a word from a good mentor can ward off a big mistake in making a decision. I've had that experience myself, and I have the tendency to take help from several mentors before I make big decisions. Because there's an adage, I'm not sure where it's from, but it mentions that one should ask 7 Brahmins before making a decision. And of course, those are for bigger decisions that have great consequences and so forth. But this is the way in which one can make decisions that are helpful for advancing in spiritual life and not becoming more entangled in one's material or spiritual life. Om Tat Sat. Any final comments? And I mean by that reflections. I'll just take a couple. Yes.
I just got reminded of how you showed the practical example of this. Before you started initiating, you gave a lecture in which you explained that you talked to Guru Prasad Swami and your other mentors, and then you have made this decision. And that was the first time I got a practical idea of how people take decisions and not whimsically taking decisions, like how you talk to your god brothers and you gave a detailed explanation of why you have come to the decision. So thank you for that, for setting that example.
Yeah, I don't remember that lecture. I do remember writing a letter, but maybe I spoke about it also. But that was definitely a big decision, and it wasn't one that I made very quickly either. It was over a long period of time, and it was after talking to many, many people. Damodar.
I was just thinking, it's more mental spec, maybe not, that Krishna made this arrangement again because till this point everybody was getting killed one after the other, and Draupadi was, unless she lost her son, she wanted to get the 99 sons of Gandhari killed. And after this, the fire of destruction typically she was more like Kali, devouring one after the other. So many, almost so many people died in this battlefield, and this pretty much created a truce. Let's stop. Otherwise, so Krishna again multi-purpose with one event.
Thank you. Yes.
So I'm reminded of the Indra and the Prithu episode,
Yes.
in which actually from external point of view, Indra was the perpetrator and the grief party was Prithu, but Krishna appears with Indra. I mean, he appears with Indra along his side, and then he's kind of truce, as Damodar Prabhu was also mentioning.
You might want to just flesh that out a little bit, because maybe everyone doesn't have the same context.
So Indra has performed 100 sacrifices, and if Prithu Maharaj performs 100 sacrifices, then he can be the next president of the universe. He did 99. And the last sacrifice, horse sacrifice, which he was performing, Indra was stealing one after another by taking the garb of a Upper Sampradaya founder, and every time he was being stopped in some way or the other, and then the Brahmanas told Prithu Maharaj after several tries that why are you being meek? Just do the needful and kill Indra. And then when Prithu was taking those steps, I think Vishnu, Brahma also appeared, and Vishnu appeared with Indra, and there's a verse in which he says, alongside of Vishnu there was Indra. So this is very, very intriguing, because Indra ari vyakulam loge mridayanti yuge yuge, that it may appear that Indra is the perpetrator, but he is very dear to Krishna, and it's not black and white. There are several nuances. It's not the way how we see it, but how Krishna is seeing it. And Krishna had a purpose to do the truce, glorify Prithu, show that he really loves Indra, and several things. So I just got reminded by this.
Yeah, and there's a very important, powerful verse there in which Brahma, who's dissuading Indra Prithu from going after Indra and killing him, tells him that in these cases where destiny appears in your life and it's intractable, first of all, you should see that it's destiny, and then also you shouldn't try to reverse it, because he said then you'll enter into the deepest levels of anxiety. And in the purport, Prabhupada explains how there are perplexities and reversals of fortune even for saintly people, and that when one tries to overcome them, when they're obviously not meant to be overcome or they're insurmountable, then one simply digs oneself into a deeper hole. So tolerance has to come in, and that's also a decision sometimes, that to tolerate some insurmountable situation that's come up in one's life, and just wait for the Lord's mercy. Yes?
Yes, Maharaj, just wanted to understand, what was that question what was that decision you were referring to, which Gandharva Mataji told? Actually, we didn't know that one, so if you could share.
For initiating disciples?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It is? Okay. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Even though Arjuna acted on his own will, instead of following either Bhima or Draupadi, the outcome of that action was worse for Ashwatthama, because it was a fate worse than death. Even though there was a curse on Ashwatthama, so I would want to know your thoughts on that. Yeah. It was, if he would have
Well, it depends on whose perspective you're considering it to be worse. in other words, worse for his reputation and for what's going on in this particular life for him. I mean, he's not going to get, not having a very good career after that. People aren't going to, what are those interviews you have to go to and things like that. But ultimately, Krishna is the perfect moral agent, and the ways in which one is, quote unquote, punished are meant to bring one to a higher state of consciousness ultimately. I mean, there are many instances where people are punished and then they come to a higher ground because they become humble. And for instance, Indra was trying to destroy all the inhabitants of Vrindavan out of his pride, and Krishna knew this, so he arranged a situation to crush the pride of Indra. And later on, he was in a quiet place, he was very friendly with him and said, I hope I didn't disturb you too much. But the Acharyas and the Bhagavatam itself explain that Krishna did it as a remedial measure. So even in these, it mentioned right there in the purport that there was no injunction for killing the body of a Brahmin, but for taking away his status, there was. So yes, that was bad for Ashwatthama, worse than death. But what happens then? Does one perhaps become humble and then have an opportunity to redeem himself because of that? So, you have to consider what the ultimate goal is of all these injunctions and so-called punishments and so forth. They're not punishments just gratuitously enforced, but actually they're meant to bring somebody to a higher state of consciousness. For instance, those who are murderers are asked to, in some cases, be killed. So then somebody may object and say, well, that's violence to violence, but according to the prescription of the Manu Samhita, apparently there's a way in which by being executed by the state in this life, one doesn't have to suffer all that karma in the next life. Of course, it's a whole issue about how one determines what a murderer is these days and so forth. But that gives the principle. I hope that helped and it didn't make it more convoluted.
It did help, thank you.
It did. Okay,
there was
good.
also a curse on Ashwatthama that he's going to be roaming around the planet during Kali Yuga with the wound on his forehead from the jewel that was pulled by Arjuna.
He's still out there.
He's still out there.
Yeah.
Just one last point, Maharaj. And Ashwatthama has to become the next Vedvyas. As per Bhagavatam, he is going to be the next Vedvyas, so he was left alive.
Mahavishnu Goswami says that why that is because when Arjuna and Ashwatthama, everybody was practicing in Drona's ashram, every day Arjuna would come late after practicing. So Ashwatthama was his classmate. So he will take the prasadam and wait for Arjuna to come back and eat the prasadam before he slept. And that's why, in reciprocation for that, because he served his devotee, Krishna blessed him that he will become the Vedavyas. That's why Mahavishnu Goswami says you will never understand why Krishna does what he does.
Except you can see the deference he gives to his devotees, right? Yeah. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Thank you for coming, everyone tonight, and for everyone who joined us on the internet. Please let's give them a Hare Krishna. And now we're going to put away